Hello, this is Fern, and today I would like to share with y'all a video of baking some sourdough bread. So the whole process of making sourdough is a pretty lengthy process, but it's also very satisfying because it kind of feels like you're making something really quite amazing out of very little. So I'll share the recipe that I use for this in the description. I've only ever used this recipe, and this was the first time I actually made the full recipe. I usually do a half, so then I get 4 little tiny loaves, and this one makes 8 small loaves, kind of like buns. So, also, I'm not sure. I think my KitchenAid has gone a little haywire with all of this dough because the lock mechanism kept coming undone, and the motor also seemed to be getting quite a bit hot with the load of the dough. So, a couple things. It's a very cute color, but I'm a little bit questioning the craftsmanship of this particular model. But all of that besides. So sourdough, you start it with a starter. And I think sourdough has had quite a bit of a trend recently with the whole, bread selling out of stores so much during the early periods of the pandemic. But honestly, I I started to not want to make sourdough during kind of peak pandemic times because it seemed like something that was a little bit like required in order to have bread that was like super secure, I guess is a way to put it. And I'm just not about that. I don't want to make it if I don't have to. Which seems pretty crazy, but whatever. It is a very lengthy process, and so it's best to do if you know you have about 2.5 days where you'll be able to work on it. Of course, there's quite a lot of waiting time, but you kind of have to be there when it needs you. So those are my words of advice. But sourdough starts with a sourdough starter, which is something that you can either get some from a friend, which is what I did. Matt actually has a coworker who gave him some as a gift, and I readily hopped on that and kept it well fed. You need to give it flour and water over time to make sure that the yeasts are happy and continue to live. You can make your own starter. You're basically collecting the wild yeasts that live around you, and that's how you can start bread without buying yeast, which really is great. I know early on in the pandemic times, I didn't actually have enough flour. I think I had some whole wheat flour after a while because that was what was available, but I didn't have any white flour for a while. So that also put a hamper on things. But yeah, it's definitely a useful skill to know and a useful thing to have if you aren't going to have ready access to like quick yeasts. And it is also very just yummy and satisfying. So you mix your starter with some flour and some water, and you have that set in the fridge for like 12 hours. And then the day after, which is when I started filming for this video, you then add some salt, some sugar, some more flour, and you mix it into a dough. You let that dough rise, and then you split it into little bun sized bread ball things. And then you let those rise. And each rise is about 3 or 4 hours. So it is quite a lot of waiting. So 12 hours, and then, you do some work, and then you wait another 4 hours, and then you do some work, and then you wait another 3 hours, and then you bake for, I think, 30 minutes. So the baking is definitely the fastest part of this process. And for me, making sure the timing is all right can be kind of difficult, because you have to start it like first thing in the morning so that you can bake it later in the evening or at night. So I think I was baking this at like 10:30 or something like that, because I did start a little bit late on the whole thing. I tried to add some dried, dehydrated wild plums to this bread mix, and I just chopped up the dehydrated plums, and I added it to the very initial kind of like battery stage, what you put in the fridge overnight. And I very much underestimated how much flour this was going to use. So there is really barely any realization that there is chopped up fruit in the bread. When I cut it open, I can't really tell at all. So that was a bummer, because I was trying to see how I could use these wild plums, because I'm dehydrating a lot of them, because I have just a huge excess of them. And they're a little bit sour, so I thought they would be good in like a baked item. So I'll try it again, but with more fruit next time. And then I made a couple of things with the fresh baked bread. This is actually the morning after, so it's not even super fresh. But I put some brie on it and served it with some dehydrated apricots. And I gave that to Matt for his breakfast. And then I also made myself a little sandwich with some delicious greens, sauteed greens with caramelized onions. And those were very, very good. That was like chard, amaranth greens, broccoli greens, and cauliflower greens. So that sauteed with some onion was really great on a sandwich. What I usually like to do if I'm going to have sauteed greens on a sandwich, which is something that I do quite enjoy, is I like to put some mayonnaise on the sandwich. But for today, I didn't have any mayonnaise, so I used some hummus spread, and it was equally as delicious. So yeah, and there's endless great ways to use bread. So yeah, if you don't have a sourdough starter, or you've never made sourdough, I really encourage you to try it out. And thanks for watching.